Okay, so hello everyone. Let's go ahead and get started and give some intros. I'll go first. So my name is Kim Cates. I'm a senior data scientist. I also work as a product manager, and I oversee a lead data scientist. We are DoD contracting, so for KBR, we do anything from supporting down air, building predictive maintenance models, to also supporting AFRL, building human performance models, so trying to detect physiological events in humans. And so we're also building an end-to-end analytics environment within the cloud. So I'll hand it off to you.
Dmitry Petrov, I'm CEO of Iterative AI. We build AI platforms. A good portion of our products are open source. The most famous one is DVC, Data Version Control, which I initially built even before starting the company. And now I focus on tools and for machine learning. But before, 5 years ago, I was a data scientist at Microsoft Bing. So I had hands-on experience on these building models, working with the teams, and this is where my experience and intuition came from for building the platforms.
Hey everyone, I'm Natesh. I'm currently a lead data scientist at Finicity, which is masterclass global market division. We power the AI and the data strategy that lies behind the mapping technology. Prior to this, I've spent many years at Chase building their core underwriting and fraud models.
Hey everyone, great to see some familiar faces. I'm Gideon and the CEO and co-founder of Comet. We help machine learning teams to manage the entire development workflow model, so all the way from tracking which data sets to use, the experiments, understanding why one model is better than the other, all the way to hopefully when these models make it to production, monitor them and take back some of the information from production back to training. Like Dmitry, I have a corporate background before I started Comet 5 years ago. I was a data scientist at Google, and I worked on hate speech detection and YouTube comments.
Hi everyone, my name is Linda. I lead the data analytics and data science team at HyreCar. HyreCar is a marketplace business in this gig economy. For example, now that everyone is at the conference, if you have a car that you don't use, you can list a car on the platform. If someone is a gig driver that they want to do the gig work, such as an Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, but they don't have a car to use, so they can find your car on the platform. Literally, we are performing a match for the vehicle owners and vehicle drivers, and in this case, it's a win-win solution. So for me personally, I have extensive experience helping business laying out analytics and data science foundations and creating roadmaps that can empower the decision and the added value to the business, to the end users.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. So first question, AI clearly has value, but it is far from easy. Why is making AI work for you so hard? So let's start with you, Dmitry.
Sure. I think the challenges that with AI that kind of evolving over time. Today I see three challenges. One is kind of a mental model that people have who are working on AI and who manage AI teams. Second is the processes, like how we collaborate together, how we become more efficient. And the third one is how to become more efficient, how to execute these processes inside the company. So regarding the mental model, the mental part of these challenges, I've seen many times when people kind of have a bit wrong expectation to models and AI. Example might be one leader is asking we have a model for evaluating some risks and when we are giving credit lines for businesses, but why we rejected this particular company? Because this is a decent company, we should give credit for them. And that's a good example of not a right mental model, because as a leader you shouldn't think about why we are making mistakes here and there. AI is making mistakes, right? It's gonna be 100% correct. The right question would be how often we make mistakes for this particular types of clients. Statistically, what does it mean? Should we improve model? And should we improve model in some particular subset segment of the businesses? How to increase the accuracy of the model, right? And this is mismatch between kind of I don't know, like statistical and structural thinking happens like all the time on the leadership level and even in like developers, like hands-on people level. For example, like you need to build a model and your data of course doesn't fit, right? Because it's like way more than you have in memory and like the first idea like from like kind of like a old school, I would say, data science is that, all right, let's get a bit bigger machine, right, to fit everything. But like, all right, mindset should be different. Like, let's sample data. Let's apply some transformations. Let's apply some autoencoders or something, right? So this mental shift like needs to happen in the CIT. That's root cause of many problems. Regarding the processes, I remember like 4 or 5 years ago, the biggest question was how to build an AI model, where to find data scientists. Today, the situation is different. We have a lot of data scientists on the market, very strong people with a really good background. We have a lot of models, some in production, some are helping making decisions. But we don't know how to efficiently execute this, how to work together, how to collaborate together. And sometimes a big mistake is let's take some tools and like implement this as much as we can, automate as much as we can. And sometimes what we see that some teams are not ready for this. Like if you like, usually when we work with the clients, we kind of evaluate the maturity levels. And if your maturity level is 1, it's probably not a smart decision to try to jump right to 4. So you need to start with something simple, like how you communicate together. Do you use like version control? Do you have like a code review when like your data scientists know like about each other works? So start with something simple, and then you will be ready to jump to like some platform like automation, etc. So don't try to solve the problem at one shot.
Thank you, Dmitry. So does everyone have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, maybe I can add a couple of points. I completely agree with Dmitry. I think the challenges of making AI successful are just basically across the business, across the stack. There's many of them. I think one point that we're here at this AI4 conference, where an MLOps vendor in a way with a lot of discussions about tooling, and don't get me wrong, that's like a massive part of that. But seeing some of our customers are like super successful with machine learning, like Uber and Etsy and Zappos, and learning from them. One of the things I think we've seen is the biggest challenge as an organization, especially with larger companies, seeing value from machine learning is finding that intersection between kind of the business needs and the data science team. Because often you have a really great data science team that can build amazing models, but they might not be aware as much as what's really critical for the business. And then on the business side, they are very well aware of what problems they're trying to solve, but they might be less aware of what's actually possible with machine learning. I'm sure everyone's seen like someone from the business side say, "Hey, build me a model that does this," which is sometimes completely impossible. So when you get that intersection, and there's multiple ways to do it, and it's mostly about processes and organizational structure. When you get that intersection, you suddenly find all this like super low-hanging fruit, simple models often, right? It doesn't have to be something fancy, and the ROI is just like completely insane there. So maybe I'll share one example because for me it was just mind-blowing. Zappos built a model that predicts their true shoe size, right? So basically it looks at everyone's orders and returns, and based on that, you can try why a pair of Nike say it's size 10, they might say, hey, you should try 9.5. That reduced the amount of returns at such level that it increased the entire company profitability by 8%, right? And the CEO goes to the head of the machine learning team, which is a team of 7-8 people at the time. It's like, first of all, who are you? Second of all, please build more of this, right? So that's a really good example where there's just like significant low-hanging fruit, and by getting these things together, just the value is there. So you just have to look for it.
Yeah, totally. I think I definitely agree because there's lots of times there's a disconnect between the data scientists and the building the products and who these products are intended for. I think additionally, there's another thing which is we have to use the right data because after all, AI is a tool. Right now that you have a right question, have filling the gap. But we need to be able to have the right data and then so in order to maximize the utility of AI.
I think all of these are great points. I think just one one that I would like to add on this topic is how many of you here have had AI projects fail? Okay. Okay. Quite a few of you. So I'm assuming this is not unfamiliar to all of you. So I think one big driver is the change in mentality. So sometimes what would happen is we've all been living the world of software for 20, 25 years, and AI is a new beast in its own. So sometimes there could be unrealistic expectations where an AI model is only successful if it's 95% accurate. But it cannot be like perfect to actually drive business. Like if an AI model is 75% accurate and it's like what Gideon said, I mean if it's driving profitability up by 8%, it's still a win. So I think there's a change in mindset where software applications are, like you have like a uptime of 99.9%, and that's not really the case when it comes to an AI project. Success, etc., should be measured differently, and business value may not really mean the modern metric. There's alignment, but it's not necessarily the same thing. So just being aware, right, to the top of the company about this will actually help get buy-in for the project and also for the AI strategy across the company.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all that. The one thing I want to add from my perspective, being in DoD is it's so easy to develop a model, locally on your machine. To actually deploy it, there's a lot of issues when it comes to that. And really it comes to the question of data ownership. A lot of these customers that we deal with do not want their data in the cloud. So we really have to communicate with them effectively to say that we can actually be compliant with your security requirements. So that's a big hurdle for us as well. All right, let's move forward to the next question. All right. So what are the best tools or processes to use for successful AI production within an organization? So Natesh, that's for you.
Started. Very interesting question. So I think all of us at an enterprise AI strategy, the big thing that we're trying to see is credibility for the AI project. I think I would like to break this down into like 3 small things, right? One is clarity. The second one is collaboration, and the third one is creativity. We need clarity of vision across the entire company. We need to also collaborate from the get-go. Collaboration is not a byproduct of a successful AI project, but it's actually the first step of a successful AI project. And you might ask who are the collaborators, and that question basically has multiple answers depending on the type of industry or etc. Like for example, if you're building a product in fintech for us, at MasterCard, like we need to comply with regulation for most of our products, and we need to think of regulations right from the first step. It's not like we can use whatever feature we want in the last step, regulations afterthought, and then basically we have to make significant delays in the project deadlines. But we need to collaborate with the right people from day one to make sure that we are going in the right direction in a reasonable time. So that's very important, and also creativity. We are a slightly early stage team within MasterCard, and for us, we need to be creative with respect to how we use data. Are we using the right data sets, and how do we scale? Like for example, we are in open banking where I get like billions of transactions. How do you build a model? How do you, even to think of labeling billions of transactions is not feasible. How do you label a data set that is still representative while being efficient, sample efficient? So we need to be creative and always be open to trying out multiple things so that we can achieve our outcomes in like a reasonable time span. So I think these would be the top ones.
So collaboration, definitely. I would say you want your ML ops guy working with the engineer to the big data engineer, all the people work together. I 100% agree. And also you want to be vertical and horizontal. So senior people working with junior and all kinds of different specialties within data science. The other thing I want to add to that is actually monitoring the models themselves. That is so important in combination with modeling tasking. And we need to be able to build our Scrum that's agile, of course, but it's strict, that we're also accounting for when we pursue some kind of researching some kind of model and it doesn't actually work out. So how do we account for that and monitor that with tasking? So we don't want to just spin our wheels and funding is exhausted and now it's like, okay, what do we do now? So definitely monitoring the environment in combination with the employees.
Collaboration is definitely the key, right? So only like the best perform team there collaborate very actively, and this collaboration happens in a different level. It's a collaboration inside the team who build the model. It's collaboration with the leadership, which we talked in the previous question, right? everyone should be on the same page. Everyone should understand how the accuracy contributes to the business values. And it's also collaboration with the infrastructure, software engineering teams. It's about like deploying model, monitoring models, right? So everyone should be like on the same page. Model which is running, which is like what is the live metrics, online metrics, what are the training metrics, what are the business expectations and business values. So like, all of those should be like should work together. Everyone should be on the same page and have the holistic picture of the process.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I think only another thing I want to add on top of that is there are definitely lots of tools and processes, in this landscape of AI. On top of, using the right tools and processes, another thing is to build a framework or infrastructure that can be adaptive to the changing technology. After all, this field is developing really fast.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. So, who needs to be involved to successfully build and productionize AI models within an enterprise organization? A center of excellence, disparate teams, who has responsibility for what, and what skill sets should each group have? So this was for John. So does anyone aware that John couldn't make it today, unfortunately? If you find John, let us know. Does anyone have any initial responses to this?
Yeah, I think in short, in a perfect world, everyone should be involved. I know people are gonna laugh at it. So at the minimum, I think both stakeholders, again, to second Lynn's points, both stakeholders and data scientists have to play a active role in it. Because nominally, all these data science or AI projects is under the purview of the data team. So there can be a little interaction with the business stakeholders. As a result, there can be a disconnect, right, between what these products are and who these products are intended for. So we have to make sure that data scientists and business stakeholders can work hand in hand from the get-go to establish common understanding. This will not only making sure that data science have a good and solid understanding to the business, in the meantime empowering business stakeholders to be more hands-on with data. I think this can also reduce the confusion in terms of how and why the techniques are applied.
Yeah, I think the question had two parts, right? The first one is from an organizational perspective. There isn't one size fit all, right? There's some organization with having a center of excellence, which is essentially like an internal consultancy, works really well. In some cases, the data scientists and the practitioners are part of the business teams or product teams. There's really no one size fits all here, and more than everything, I think it depends on the size of the organization. I think from the second part of the question is who needs to be involved in this end-to-end workflow, right? And that's another thing that's really different between different companies. We definitely have some customers where the person training the model is the one deploying it, is the one maintaining it. We've seen customers that there's this the handoff, right? The data scientist builds a model, kind of gives it to a software engineer and an ML engineer to deploy it. That has benefits because typically that person might have more expertise with observing environments and all the complexities that come with that. But that is typically a super challenging point because if you don't do this handoff properly, it just adds significant friction. Really adds time to production for these models. And a lot of the friction comes from the fact that typically the people used to work on the serving side, they're used to deploying applications, which are not that different from deploying a model. And a lot of companies have these CI/CD systems that work really well. You can definitely reuse them and probably should. But how does the communication and collaboration between the person training the model and the person serving the model looks like is where all the success is, right? So if you think about if I'm a data scientist and I built a model, and I need to deliver to the person in charge of serving it, I need to give them the serving code, I need to give them the model binary, I need to tell them a lot of information, where this model came from, what experiment, what data it was trained on. There's so much metadata that comes with it that we don't typically see with deploying applications. So if you are kind of working in an organization where those are two different personas in this process, having something like a model registry makes a huge difference because it just removes all the friction there. And sure, there's still communication, there's still questions, but they're not just over emails or Slack. There's really like a ground truth to what actually happened, and we start talking about retraining and versioning and all of that. That really removes significant friction.
Thank you.
One other couple of things that I would like to add, which is definitely worked for us in the past, is so I think it's also helpful while building machine learning models or data science models to actually have a peer team within your data science org actually collaborate with you and review. So it's of course like as the other panelists mentioned, it's important to collaborate with engineering from the onset so that they are aware of what building what the business outcomes align to. But it's also critical to have like another set of eyes going through the data science model building process, purely because for those of us who have built data science models, we know that there are so many assumptions to make, and like there's so much uncertainty that comes with building a machine learning model. So it's extremely crucial for us to have somebody else go through it, just do sanity check and the process and make sure that whatever is happening is robust and also there is business outcome.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So as you guys are talking, something that came to mind is we really need somebody to provide oversight that is a project manager or a product owner, because as a data scientist, developer, engineer, what have you, it's so easy to be in the depth of your work and not really see things from the big picture. I have a lot of my data scientists come up with these grandiose ideas. I'm like, okay, but you also have this project you need to work on. We all only have this much funding, so how are you going to allocate your time? And so it's really important to take a bigger picture on everything. And then the last thing I want to add to that is you really need to communicate with a SME. I mean, you want to communicate with your stakeholders, your customers, but have a SME that's familiar with the problem you're trying to address. That's super important working with DoD data, because oftentimes it's data sets that with a whole bunch of jargon, especially working with unstructured text that we're not really familiar with as data scientists. So anything else?
In general, in terms of responsibility and full end-to-end process, I truly believe that this process, end-to-end process, should go to the teams, and teams should be responsible end-to-end, and this is what I've seen in many successful teams. And I see this trend like how people hire data scientists. Today, data science leaders usually expect software development skills, and in some cases, right? Because they want a team be independent and responsible. I think it's a big trend is happening in software development, and everything goes to the teams like security, DevOps, security ops, and etc. And I believe the same trend is happening in data science. But coming back to this maturity level, some teams might be not kind of ready to take so much responsibility. And I see a lot of successes among the companies with the excellence centers. There is some team, the team went through many projects, they collect a lot of experience and expertise, and of course it makes a lot of sense to use them as a center of expertise and to share the knowledge. But in general, I think this is kind of a temporary solution for this company, and eventually they will make end-to-end teams that can work efficiently, separately as an organization together.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. So I'm going to skip around here a little bit as this relates to our discussion. So what is your AI talent strategy? How should organizations hire and train data science talent? So this is for John, so I'm going to take this question. So similar to what you were saying, I think it's really important to hire data scientists or ML engineers, what have you, with the intention or the goal to become a full stack data scientist. Basically what you're saying, you're able to do end-to-end data science. So look for someone who has a specialty, specialized knowledge, but has the motivation and drive to learn a skill set outside of what they already know, but also can communicate effectively. That's super important, and can translate their skills to other people.
I can add to the previous point about this full stack teams. I see this trend today. Like a lot of teams require basic software development skill. I remember this from Microsoft. Like you cannot become data scientist at Microsoft without basic coding skills. It's just not hireable. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should do everything, right? It's not possible. It doesn't make sense. But people should have a basic understanding of software development, right? Some data scientists would be like happy to work on deployment and some automation. The others should focus on modeling. That's great, but you should understand at least how it works in general. And if something goes well, to like you can communicate and understand the whole picture.
Very true. No.
So I think for us, there are like three, if you think of a Venn diagram, right? One is the domain knowledge, the industry expertise. Okay, we are in fintech domain, so okay, we have fintech experience, or like how we're writing models, but that's one dimension. The other dimension is definitely engineering, and the other dimension is machine learning. Right? If you get all three of them, I mean, don't even think twice. But I think it's good to have at least two of them. Like, for example, if somebody is a good data scientist but not a great engineer, but they bring a wealth of domain knowledge, that's still a great asset to the team. That will help us build projects much faster and think of other perspectives we might otherwise miss. So I think this kind of how we think. The unicorn data scientist is basically someone who has all of them. That's what I think it really is.
Yeah, I think that totally agree. Like one thing I want to add on top of it is, it's certainly like a tough question for hiring the like data science talents and AI talents, because the marketplace is very competitive and great talents is always in demand. So in order to do, I feel first of all we have to map out the business strategy, both the current and the strategic, and then look at our current existing talent profiles and to see what we already have and what do we need. And also at the same time, what are something that we can develop into and what are something new that we have to bring in. Additionally, I think like we all talk about, there should be an emphasis in terms of not only the technical know-how, but also the solid understanding to business, because like from creation to deployment of the model or these techniques is a team sports. We have to have everyone have a good like communication skills and then be able to work in a collaborative environment in order to bring the most value to business.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add anything?
I'll add just one point. I completely agree. Obviously, the technical capabilities are critical here. I do think that, like, at the end of the day, I mean, it depends. Obviously, if you have a very dedicated team with a lot of people, that's, bringing your end data scientists, I think it's a different discussion. But if you're a little bit earlier on, in my view, the hardest thing about machine learning is the problem definition way before the modeling and architecture and all that. That's the hardest thing. And having on a team at least a few people that are able to do that is just absolutely critical. So there's, I'll share, this is an interview question, it's not mine, I stole this from Amit, who's the chief data officer at Orange Theory. But he asked every data scientist that he's interviewing, after all the technical questions, of course, he asked them, hey, I'm gonna give you a model, and that model is, don't worry what it is, it's a black box, but it will solve every problem in the world with 100% accuracy. Which problems would you solve, right? When people start asking, oh, what architecture? No, it doesn't matter. It's a black box that will solve every problem. And then someone will typically say, oh, I will predict churn. It's like, okay, great, but what are we going to do with that if we know, okay, next quarter we're going to have 20% churn? It doesn't help us understand what is the problem. So that's kind of like that mindset of trying to gauge with people you're interviewing and hiring for a team. Are they able to connect this machine learning knowledge, problem solving, to actually solving a business problem, which is at the end of the day what I think we're all trying to do.
Yes, I agree. It's like the ability to like independently learn and critically think and solve problems, because you can tell someone what to do and they can do it, but can they, take this problem and figure out how to research it and how to address it correctly? Very important. So this kind of relates to our discussion right now. So the next question is, let's talk about stakeholder buy-in, an important ingredient for successful AI. What is the best way to communicate about AI projects so that executives get on board and the budget required becomes accessible? So this is for me. I want to say from my experience, like as you were pointing out, we really need to identify what the problem is and be precise in what we can deliver to the customer. That way, when we have these meetings, we literally bold it out for them so that we can say, this is what we're going to provide for you. And in turn, we also can, make comment on what is the ROI, what's the return on investment. So from our perspective, we're going to build a tool on predictive maintenance. This tool is going to tell you what parts you're going to need that are associated with certain maintenance orders, or how much downtime is associated with this maintenance problem. And therefore, we can save them some money also in staffing and these parts that they're ordering that might be some kind of like cyclical troubleshooting. So it's overall just going to be beneficial for them. So we need to be clear and concise in how we deliver that knowledge.
Yeah, I think additionally is exactly as what Ken mentioned. I think it's very important to engage the stakeholders as early as possible and to build the trust. Because eventually, our job as data scientists or data analysts or as machine learning engineers to empower people and by using our products and create it so we can drive business together. I think additionally is to streamline the communications. I think there's also another special group of people I call the stakeholders, which is the leadership. And we need to get the leadership buy-in so we can secure the investment, the commitment. This can be done, by creating, fostering like a data-centric culture. At the same time, to show the wins and then what's the, investing in these techniques and the tools and technologies can bring about to the business.
Yes, 100%. Anyone else? Okay. All right, so next question. What are best practices around cloud computing versus on-prem as it relates to AI? So this is for me actually as well, and I find this to be a trick question. So from our perspective, you can spin up a Kubernetes cluster on-prem as well as you can spin it up in the cloud. And overall, my take on it in terms of building these ML platforms is you really want these environments to be cloud agnostic or on-prem agnostic. You want to be able to easily move your environment from one location to another. Especially in the DoD, we might start out on-prem because of security reasons. Maybe we don't want all of our data in the cloud because the customer might be skeptical about that. And maybe in the future, there's been so many discussions about this, we can easily move it into the cloud because we're just running all our applications as containers, or we're using S3 buckets, which we can also access in the cloud. So it's really all about just using standardized technology, moving it quickly.
So when we built our tools like 5 years ago, they were by default on premium or cloud, you can use in any settings, and we see a lot of success in both environments. At the same time, we clearly see the trend to clouds, right? It's really hard to ignore. But what changed in the past maybe couple of years? Like before, every company was saying we need to go to cloud. We are moving to cloud. It's good. And today they're saying wait a minute. We should not use only one cloud. We need to have leverage in the discussion with cloud providers. We need to use different benefits of different clouds. For example, you can be AWS shop, but at the same time you can train on GPUs in Google Cloud, right? So the multi-cloud trend is, I think, the biggest. It's huge right now, and that's important to support this first, and second, as a team, you should think in advance. You shouldn't put too much effort to one specific cloud. It might hurt you down the road.
Yeah, and I also want to add, I think it really depends on a case-by-case basis, because how big is the project that you're trying to run? Comet is just one application. Do you really need to be in the cloud? Probably not. You can run it on-prem if you really want to. So, anyone else for this?
It might be on-prem is a constraint or a requirement. I think if everyone, it's clearly easier to use a cloud provider. There's obviously disadvantages. Data security being a big one, but also costs, right? Especially when we're talking about machine learning. If you're running significant GPU loads, that will get real expensive, real fast on a cloud provider. And if you do have your own GPU farm, it will be cheaper. But obviously, it comes with very, very significant overhead. We do see a lot of organizations that were kind of true on-prem, moving to cloud. I think a lot of people today talking about VPC, right? So us as a vendor, some of our customers are deploying our entire platform platform on their VPC, so it runs on their AWS Google Cloud account. Nothing ever leaves the firewall, which is typically like this good in-between solution, true on-prem and like SaaS. But I think, on-premise is adds significant amount of challenges, and getting that mobility that you're talking about, even if you're using Kubernetes, you run this Terraform here and then you expect it to run on AWS, but then it doesn't. So it just adds a lot of challenges. But obviously, in some cases like defense, you don't have a choice and you have to use an on-prem environment.
Yeah, I feel that if a business, it truly depends on the business need. If a business have lots of proprietary softwares, right, and then or have the legacy presence, then probably the on-prem is the better option. And here at HyreCar, because even though we're a public company, but we still maintain a startup culture and we're in a high growth curve. So we leverage everything on cloud and then taking advantage of the open source infrastructure because those things have the ability to scale faster.
If you think about this from kind of philosophical point of view, I think this is our common should be a goal for our industry to be cloud agnostic, because there is an opinion I heard this first time from Databricks founders. I think he was saying that clouds are so powerful today; they generate a lot of values and revenue, and if we cannot diversify the clouds, we end up in the world when only 3 software companies exist. So in this sense, I see this as a kind of a mission to provide tools, multi-clouds, on-prem tools, when people have a choice and you don't depend on cloud as much as we do today.
Agreed. Okay. Anyone else? Did you want to add something? No? You're good? Okay, so we're coming to our final question here. So I'm going to give everyone an opportunity on this. So try to answer it concisely, but feel free to ramble if you'd like. So what is the number one thing that will lead to more effective AI production across the business world? This is for Gideon.
I mean, I think we talked about a lot of things today that I think will benefit. Again, I don't want to repeat myself. I'll just summarize. I think the biggest thing from my experience and seeing a lot of our customers, the most successful ones are the ones that have alignment between what the business needs and what's possible with machine learning. There's many ways to get there, but if that is from my perspective, the number one most critical thing.
Yeah, totally. Frame the right questions, because after all, if I repeat again, AI is just a tool, and then we are all here working the business and to drive the business growth, and then everything has to gear towards the common direction. And then it's so hard to just pick one. So if I get choose another one, that will be the right data. Because again, AI is just a technique. We need to, after we have the frame the right question, we need to have the right data and to be able to develop those technologies. Because AI is not going to frame the question for you, and AI doesn't know how to choose the right data.
Adding on to what Gideon said is, I think it's very important to realize that data science and AI is as much art as it is science. Don't forget to create a culture which tolerates failure for your data scientists, because it's very experimental in nature. Not all the experiments that we carry out is going to succeed. I wish, but that's unfortunately not the case. But just creating a culture that embraces innovation and creates a tolerance for failure is going to be a huge stepping stone towards AI adoption across the company. And this also will help source innovative ideas right from the ground up, from the people who actually deal with the data, rather than a typical top-down approach where business leaders create the use cases versus somebody on the ground floor actually saying, hey, we can actually solve this problem using data science, and this can open up a multi-million-dollar market for the company. So just keeping eyes and ears open. So.
Nice, I like that a lot. Yeah, can tolerate failure. You have to be creative in how we build that environment. Yeah, so I was going to add, effective communication, I think, is extremely important for making AI production level successes.
Data is definitely number one, and I think you can look at even models as a derivative from your data, right? It's just another specialized slice of your data set. And I think it was clear most of the time. And when we start building our tool, the tool I initially created was DVC, data version control, because we put data in the training lifecycle. That was kind of the biggest innovation in this tool. And that's still actually also a problem, the data and data management. In the world of structured data, databases, data warehouses, there are a lot of different solutions, and you can choose, you can adapt the solution for your need. But once you put data to your S3, if you can work with like images or like OCR data, like with PDFs or in semi-structured data, then like you don't have anything. You end up writing your Python script like how to get like 1 million of files out of your 25 millions, and it works forever, and you kind of like people like are hopeless and waiting for the days to like get it. And I see some of the customers all the time when we start talking with the customers, like saying, "Okay, that's a platform you can like do with your training and stuff, different stuff," and they're saying, "First, let's solve data problem." Because until data problem is solved, no one else does.